Hey, what's up guys and girls? Pat back here again with the final part of our Set 7 limited review. This is largely to get most of you guys prepped for your pre-release, which is this weekend for most of you guys. It can also be used or serve as a guide for drafting with friends when you were trying to play, do something a little bit different, mix it up once in a while at your local. So yeah, this is an overview for the multicolored cards as well as the black cards. I know the thumbnail says multi, but it is the multi and the black cards. If you guys haven't watched the previous 4 parts, I will link them in the description down below. Don't want to make this video too long because there are, I believe, 39 cards to cover in this video as opposed to the standard 25-ish from the previous video, so we're going to kind of go at a much faster pace. I will display the grading scale again on the screen for you guys. We grade on a scale of 10 to 1. 10 is the absolute best, 1 is the absolute worst. I will not get into specifics. See the previous videos, for those specific ratings and what they mean. So, first up, we will start with the black cards. So first up we have Son Goku Dimensional Defender. Yeah, 1 cost for a 15k is pretty good. But and he does get you a card back because he could take a life and put it in your hand. So you're basically paying 1 to get a 15k for 1 turn and draw a card. His other effect, to put 2 black battle cards back into your drop area, is basically irrelevant for the most part. It does put some stuff back in your deck for the purposes of reshuffling. So he's pretty good and he's pretty solid overall, but there's not anything super exciting about him. I'll probably give him about a 6 because a 1 cost 15k is pretty good, but he has a lot of conditions and he doesn't really do a whole lot. You're just paying 1 for a 15k one time, and it's not really going to be super relevant throughout most of the game. He's just you're paying 1 for a shot at a damage basically. And then also his ability to draw, he doesn't really net any advantage for you later on in the game, which kind of docks points from him as well. Alright, so next up we have Son Goku making an entrance. This should be of no surprise to you guys. It's an 8, it's a negate, it's colorless, so any deck can play this. You should just jam as many of these as you get, no matter what deck you're playing. You should always draft this card. You should always stick it in your deck. It is probably the best uncommon, generically good uncommon in the entire set. Next up we have Vegeta making an entrance. So you can only use him on counter to play him. Shuffling cards back into your deck doesn't really matter. In fact, that actually hurts him a bit because that's part of his cost, if I'm not mistaken. His counter, and then you have to shuffle 3 battle cards back in. So he's a super narrow window to be played. And most of the cards that trigger him are at the rare and higher level, which is another knock against him. And he doesn't provide any colors, so why would you play this card? Oop, wrong rating. It's a 2. He's a niche sideboard card. If your opponent is just overloaded on counterplay cards, sure, try him out, but I really don't think I want to be chancing a card that is 90% of the time dead in my hand and doesn't provide any relevant color fixing. Next up is Super Saiyan Trunks, just like Natate Monster from the red video. We're going to give him an 8. Even though he has 0 combo power, 2 cost 20k is too good to pass up, and every single deck benefits from having this card. It's generically good. You should just jam as many of these as you open in your decks. Period. Straight up. Best aggressive beater for 2. Trunks Time Regulator. Yeah, so this is a free body. Unlike Goku, it's free for a 15k, and I get to draw a card. Sign me up. This is relevant at every single point in the game. It fixes draws early. It can push for games super late, as well as get you those niche cards or those one-of bombs that you have in your deck. Trunks for me gets an 8. I would just play him basically in everything, just like some of the other excuse me, some of the other black cards that we have talked about in this video. The hits keep calling, man. Black cards are just kind of generically good and insane. While Supreme Kai of Time Regulator is a rare, which means that you won't see really more than one of her, and you might not see her at all. 1 cost for a blocker that draws me a card is way above rate, and every single color combination can play this no matter what. So Supreme Kai gets an 8 from me. Again, I prioritize defense, and a defense like a blocker that gets me a cantrip, welcome, always. Next up is Demigra the Sorcerer. Now I know this card seems like a niche sideboard card, but it actually is still relevant. I'm going to give Demigra a 5. Well, the reason why is, if you recall, usually one cost cards that draw me a card are a 6. So this card doesn't provide me any relevant colors, but in the on turn 1, this is a 1 cost that lets me snatch a life, which puts me closer to Awakening, and I still basically get the same effect. I get to the benefit of drawing a card. That in itself means it's worth playing, and it's worth putting in your deck, even if you don't get the additional effect of making your opponent discard down. You are, you're basically getting the same thing as you would with any of the other 1-drops in the slot. It's just the big knocks are this card is dead late game, doesn't provide color fixing, which docks it a whole point. Next up is Toa. I'm pretty sure you guys can guess what I'm going to give this card just straight up just by looking at it. Blocker Revenge. It's colorless. You can play it on your opponent's turn with counterplay. It's just straight up 8. It's just, this is probably the best defensive card in the entire set, because it's basically a 2-cost that will serve as not only a negate but a removal spell. You just have to be really, really, really careful when you play this Toa, though. If your opponent plays something like the 2-drop Goku, that's an auto that takes a life to bounce something, and you counterplay Toa in response to it, then they just bounce your Toa and you feel stupid because you just played a card for no reason. So it's not like the most amazing catch-all, works in every scenario card. I just want you guys to be aware of that. Oh boy. Assemble the squad. Yeah, let's not. It gets a 1. It's literally unplayable. Provides no color fixing. This is the first strike. Provides no combo power is the second strike. And third, and most importantly, there are no Shenron leaders in the set. This is a dead card. If you open this card, I feel bad for your pack having 1 less card. Time Transmission G. Oh boy, man. 4 costs to play a black battle card from your drop is not good, because so far, if you've been paying attention, there's like 4 of them that are playable, 2 of which are blockers. I don't really want to pay 4 to get a blocker back. Like, I mean, I guess that's alright, but like, it requires it to have already been in my warp from a previous Overwhelm card, so that's a knock against the card. Like, it would be playable if it just got me back a blocker from my drop anyway, or like, I could warp my drop and then get it from there. But yeah, this has too much setup for me to want to play it, and the only real target that you have to untap to is the Trunks. So I think that this card just straight up is a 1. I don't think you should be playing this card. I think it's a waste of space for, a lot of reasons. Again, no combo power. It is, doesn't provide any relevant color fixing, and it's super niche, and it only really has 1 good target. Like, it just, there's at least 4 reasons right there. I gave you 3 to 4 reasons why you should not consider playing this card. Almost anything is better than this card. Extra cards usually are pretty bad to deck in general and limited, unless your goal is to like pull off some super sick combo. Toki Toki City, it's more of the same. You need to overwhelm 3 times to get any value out of this, and the only good overwhelm is a 15k. I shouldn't have to play 3 cards and be able to, fill my drop 3 separate times and have to pay this on turn 1 and expect to get some kind of payoff. This is an all-star and constructed, limited, good and limited. It is not. Alright, so now let's talk about an actual, like, pretty decent black extra card. So while Unexpected Turn is incredibly narrow in its ability to, like, you're not always going to get the board wipe on this, but, like, good God, if you play this card and you actually get the counterplay, that's game over, man. Like, you get to get rid of the guy they picked, and then also all of their 2 or lesses. That's most likely the game straight up right there. But it is incredibly narrow, and it will sit in your hand for most of the game and not do a whole lot. So I'm going to give an Unexpected Turn a 7. You guys have to be really, really conscious that this card is in format, and you don't want to accidentally just get blown out. Again, if your opponent has 3 or more battle cards and play with energy cost of 2 or more, and then they play something, you just get to blow up all their 2 or less cards. So yeah, this could cost you the game if you play into this. This is basically this format's Kami. Just do not fall for this this trap. Just make sure that when you are playing battle cards that you don't fall into it, okay? Alright, so now we could finally move into the multicolor cards. So, Kaioken, Goku, Defender of Earth. This card is a little bit harder for me to rate than the standard super rare because I personally think this card is just busted. I think if you play this card, you just snap auto win, like there's nothing your opponent can do about it, and that usually means that it's a 10 from me, but there is some inherent risk to playing Kaioken Goku. So yeah, you only have a 40 card deck. 20 of them have to be in your drop, and they have to be red or green cards. So when you consider that you have 8 in life, so you have 32 cards in deck, and then 6 in hand, that's 24. Basically you have like the 24 to 32 card wiggle room to actually get all of those cards into the drop area. And then when you're considering that most of you guys are playing in sealed largely means that you're going to have like 30 to 32 cards in your primary 2 colors, and the other 8 cards are going to be either a splash of a third color or black. Like there isn't enough cards in packs, even with 6 packs in sealed, to always have exactly an even split. Like in a perfect world, you'd have like maybe like 20 red, 19 green, and 1 black or something like that. That's not going to happen. In draft, that will happen, and in draft, I would straight up just tell you right now, this Goku is a 10 because you can build around it. And if you actually like manage to stick it on board, you just win. But in sealed, that's not the case for you guys. There is some inherent risk in playing this card, but at least it does have the upside of being, and you'll see this is a common theme amongst all the multicolor cards. One, it's energy fixing, so it's 2 color energy. Which is like kind of helps smooth out your game plan, and it actually helps you if you actually are in a scenario where your pool requires you to go 3 colors. Have it being like red, green, yellow, having a bunch of red, green dual color cards will help you out tremendously, because then you could just charge yellows and then your dual color cards, and you'll basically be able to curve out just fine. So he does give you that, and then 1 cost 10k being the second thing, which is pretty good. I'm going to give Goku an 8. I'm going to err on the side of caution because I feel like most of the time you are casting this for 7. You're not actually going to be playing this for 5. If you do manage to play this for 5, Godspeed, you win the game. Like, there's nothing your opponent can do about it. Will say that if you are on this leader and or if you do open this and you are trying to play this, definitely go for the Goku with the burst 7, because that will give you the best chance of actually filling your drop in a timely fashion. Move past the SPRs to Son Goku and Piccolo, Budding Friendship. So 2 cost 10k. That alone will get us to a 5, possibly a 6 in terms of playable rate. Largely because it would be a 2. It would basically be a 2 drop 10k would basically be either a 4 or a 5 most of the time, like you guys have seen with Elder and on other cards. But this one does have the advantage of 1 being dual color, so it's energy fixing. 2, 1 cost 10k, and we value those because again, it's very hard to combo to high numbers in limited, so we do value those. Where this card really shines though is if you have the Son Gohan Youth as a 15k critical. It could possibly be even higher if you just dump your whole board into it, and you get to draw 2 cards, which is absolutely amazing. This is one of the few ways where you can just consistently keep netting cards. Like you can basically draw 2 with this card's effect, and then use those 2 cards, one of them to protect this, and possibly your Gohan, and then you'll basically be netting a card every turn, and dissuading your opponent from going after your life, which means that if you're just playing an aggressive strategy, you're probably going to end up winning the game anyways. So yeah, pretty solid card for a rare. I would probably give it a 7. If you manage to have like at least 3 to 4 Gohans, like if you have like a monster amount, I could see this being as high as an 8. But like the floor for this card is a 6, the ceiling is an 8. So I think we are on the side of caution and go with a 7 for the rating on this card. Oh man, so next up we have Gohan and Goten, Familial Bonds, the family Kamehameha in battle card form. So this card is just nuts. Like this card in constructed doesn't seem that insane to me. Like, I mean, there are ways to trick it into play from the discard pile as early as turn 2 in constructed, which is nice, but we don't have that here. So you're gonna have to pay the full 4 for this card, and it's a 20k single strike, which doesn't seem great. But if you do have red and green battle cards in play, this card is a 4 drop like 10 4, it gets a plus 10, plus 20. So like you're looking at somewhere between like 30 to 60k triple strike for 4. That is absolutely backbreaking and very, very difficult to deal with. And when you consider that the only negate that most people have in the entire format, they take 2 damage the turn you play this card to negate it. Like, this is an excellent finisher if you're trying to kill your opponent real quick. Really, really, really strong super rare. In limited, I think it's significantly better here than it is in constructed, and so for that reason I'm going to give this card a 9. You basically, like I said, when you jam this card and go face with it, it's almost always going to connect for 3, and if it doesn't, they either A, had a specific rare that they open, in which case that's bad beats, or they're just taking 2 anyway. So like you just get paid no matter what you do with this card. Next up we have Vegeta Elite. So yeah, basically 6-drop 20k double strike is not the most exciting thing in the world. But it does get 2 cards out of your opponent's hand, which means when you do play it, this card will most likely end the game or put your opponent in a very unfavorable spot. And if you somehow manage to untap and get to turn 7, the activate main will kill your opponent if you are on Raditz or Goku leader. So it is pretty good as a finisher, pretty much how akin to like what we were saying with Trunks. Like, it is pretty much like a beefy guy you can play on 6, and he should close out the game right there on 6. He's got less stats obviously than Trunks, but nixing 2 cards from your opponent's hand this late in the game, most people at this point in the game are going to have between 4 to 5 cards in their hand. So this card kind of just pushes you over the edge and puts you in a pretty favorable spot to win. Is dual color, is a 1-cost 10k combo, so it's got that going for it. I think he's a little bit better than Trunks, so I'm going to give him a 7. And that's largely because, again, your opponent warps 2 cards from their hand. So odds are, when like push comes to shove, when you just tap out and try and play this guy on 6 to go for game, it taxes your opponent pretty heavily. Alright, so next up we have Broly Tragedy Foretold. Alright, so as we said in the red video, I would not play Dormant Legend. So if you are not playing Dormant Legend, this card still gets a 4 just because it's a 2-color card with the 10k. That said, if you are playing Dormant Legend and you do have the Miracle Pool to make it, like, this card's just straight up ridiculous. I'll give it a 9. So you get to play, you'll have to dump some cards in your hand, but it might be worth it. So Arrival for 2 on this guy when you have Dormant Legend, then you get to KO 2 guys that are 15k or less, or shrink stuff so that, like, if they have Vados, it shrinks to a manageable size and lets you get it off the board. And then basically for the rest of the game, until they get rid of this guy, your opponent's going to have a real difficult time being able to combo both offensively and defensively. And that makes it, he basically just puts away the game. If your opponent has the removal spell for him, like, that's bad beats. But if you do, you open this guy, this is the biggest reason to try to play Dormant Legend, is if you open this guy. Again, I would just give him a 9. If you don't open Dormant Legend, just don't, or I should say, if you don't open this guy, I still just wouldn't try and go for Dormant Legend. Same thing applies here with the next Broly, which is Rapid Barrage. Arrival for 1 is pretty good because you get to minus shrink something or kill a utility card for minus 10. And then he has a smaller effect that is akin to the previous Broly, where you guys get to pay 1 to trade up for a better combo. So like, they combo with a super combo, you can basically pitch a 5k, or if you're tapped out, pitch a 10k and nullify that. 20k is a pretty sizable body. 4 for 20 is pretty much exactly where we'd want to be. And again, you can trick him into play. So if you are in Dormant Legend, I would give him an 8. If you're not in Dormant Legend, I would give it a 4. Alright, next up is the final Broly, Demonic Origins. This is one that I would basically just jam no matter what. 2 cost 15k is a good rate. It is 2 colors. It does have a 1 cost 10k, and then it also, when you play it, it discards a card from your opponent's hand. Even better than all the other energy fixing cards in the set, it is a check land, in that it checks to see if you have another dual color. If you do, then you get to play this card in active mode in your charge phase. Always worth considering playing this card if you were in these 2 colors. 100% good at all points in the game. Gets an 8 from me. Alright, so now we're on to the blue-yellow cards. So first up we have Meteoric Energy, SSB Vegeta, Space Jam, dunking on you. This guy is just... he's brutal, man. If you curve Goku on 2 into Vegeta on 3 or 4, yeah. It's pretty backbreaking, man. It's really good. Like, you'd have to go dual energy on 1, so that way you can afford the double blue on Goku and then the double yellow on time for Vegeta. But yeah, it's pretty backbreaking, this card. The only reason this card is not a 10 is because, you know, for a couple reasons I'll explain. So when you attack with this Vegeta, if you combo 3 or more battle cards from your energy, you time walk your opponent. You just tap all their battle cards, and then you just tap all their energy, and they do not get to untap them next turn. And he is a big, beefy 30k boy, so he's getting in there for some damage. That basically means your opponent gets a draw, a charge, and a leader swing, and that's it. Then it comes back to you, right? So it's basically attacking with this guy. If you have at least 3 cards, battle cards in your energy area, means you are taking an extra turn. That's ridiculous. The only problem with it is that, one, it is a little bit difficult to pull this off because you have to have the correct color combinations, and they all have to be battle cards, and you have to see the exact cards in hand, which is, you know, whatever. I mean, if you're on Vegeta Leader, like, this is a great card to be playing. If you are on the Vegeta Leader, it's the best reason to consider playing the Vegeta Leader. But if you're not on that leader, then, you know, there is some setup involved. And then, again, if you're at, like, 1 life, and then your opponent gets that extra turn, they could just kill you. Like, they could go, like, leader swing, overwhelm Trunks, and just try and pressure you and shotgun you. And that could get you killed. Also, if you're playing from behind with this card, you are now down on energy. If you can't kill your opponent with it, like, outright on the second turn, I'd advise not playing it. So, yeah, still really, really, really good card. Going to give it a 9. So close to a 10. Now for a significantly more underwhelming super rare is Champa and Vagos, Gracious Aid. So, yeah, you basically have to arrival this card to get any real value out of it. So you're going to already have to be dumping either a dual color card from your hand plus paying 1, or dumping 2 cards from your hand and paying 1 to get this guy and girl into play at the same time. 4 cost 19 is not really a great rate. It's basically the same as being a 4 cost 15k, which is not good at all. Reducing the combo cost in your hand is pretty cool, but the thing is, most of the cards that you're reducing the combo cost of anyway are super rares or uncommons. So yeah, like, there's not a ton of cards you're going to be reducing the combo cost for, and the ability to keep this duo around when your opponent basically kills it by pitching a card, it's situational. Like, pitching a card to save this and then they go face and pressure you, like, that could get you killed. Tapping your opponent's energy down 1 can be good, but it might not always be relevant. There's a lot of things that are very hit or miss on this leader, and it's largely stems from the fact that it's expensive, either from an energy perspective or from your hand. Just to get a 19k is really, really underwhelming. I would probably still play it if you open it, but yeah, I think this is one of the lower end supers in the set. Alright, so next up we have Beerus Fickle God, and this is pretty much akin to what we said about the 2-drop Checkland Broly. I'm going to give Beerus an 8. He's basically the exact same card, only you draw a card instead of your opponent discarding a card. I'd argue Broly is slightly better, but I feel like the payoffs in blue-yellow are more consistent overall across the color spectrum, so I'm not going to really knock it. 2 costs 15k to draw a card is just good no matter what. And you'd be happy to play this card either as energy or a battle card at any point in the game. Next up, Meteoric Energy Kefla. So, yeah, 30k barrier makes her pretty difficult to deal with. Aegis is nice and all, but like this card, the fact that you can, if you're on Kefla leader, might be able to get this card into play for, you know, basically not free, but basically for 1, because you're only going to be paying, like, I should say 2. It's 1 for the Kale. You'll get the Kefla for free if you're playing the 4 cost Kefla, which, by the way, if you're not playing the 4 cost yellow Kefla in your pool, I would probably not play this card, like, straight up. It's probably like a 5 or a 6 if you're not on the Kefla leader and you do not have that free that free Kefla. So yeah, keep that in mind. I'm assuming that you have those cards in your pool when I'm rating this card. So yeah, the main strength of this card is that it punishes your opponent really hard for swinging with their leader first. Most people are inclined to swing with their leader to see new cards. If you can trick this girl into play for the 2 energy at some point in the game, you get a big beefy beater, and then if they ever swing with their leader, you can basically pitch a dual color card from your hand to activate Aegis, and then tap them down for the turn, and they've lost their turn. So it forces your opponent to adapt a very particular playstyle. Yeah, so that's like the main strength of the card. I would say it's probably like a low 8 to a high 7 for the most part if you're in the Kefla leader. And again, you really have to have that 4-cost free Kefla, or you're just really not going to get the value. The value from the card, again, is that it's just a big beefy 30k barrier, 35 with your leader skill, that will force your opponent to adopt a less than optimal playstyle. And if they don't, then again, that's where you get paid, where all your money is. You get to tap them down. All right, next up we will go to Kefla, the peak of perfection, which I would argue is probably the Super Saiyan Kefla, but who cares? So yeah, this card is just really, really good. So let's just rattle it off. Dual color energy, 1 cost 10k. Arrival for 1, so you can get this into play as early as turn 2. If you just combo a dual card and also this card, you'll be able to, well, I should say, you combo a dual color card and then you arrival with this card, you'll get to play a 20k on turn 2, which is pretty good. It is one of the only ways in the entire format, I think it might actually say it's this and Kale, the super rare, are the only ways to get the 4-drop Zamasu off the board, which is pretty much just backbreaking for any deck that doesn't have this. Like, this is your primary way for most colors to deal with it. And then also, if you just combo with this card and your opponent's trying to defend your life, it makes it so that their energy might be messed up. Like, you can actually time walk your opponent. Like, you can basically make them end their turn prematurely by comboing with this card. So it's just super versatile. 4 for 20k is a good rate. 20k obviously on turn 2 is really good. And then the ability to either answer Zamasu or basically force your opponent's turn to end is super duper good. If you're in a Universe 6 deck, I highly recommend jamming as many of these as you can open, or draft as many as you see. Kefla gets an 8 from me. So, next up is Fuse Zamasu Divine Providence. 8 cost is basically unplayable, however, it is got the benefit of being a dual color card, so it does have some utility for a lot of decks. And if you do actually manage to stick it, 30k Indestructible is basically immortal. Like, it's not coming off the board unless your opponent has the uncommon Kefla or the super rare Kale. So like, this card is basically guaranteed to stick. If you do play it for Union, you get to bin 2 cards from your opponent's hand, which is pretty nice, and it should put the game away with a body this big and putting your opponent down 2 cards on turn 6, much like with Vegeta. It should just close out the game. It's a lot harder to play than those cards. I'm going to give it a 6 for generic leaders, just because it is dual color and it is 10k. So there is a lot of upside in that, because it does allow you to, again, go into a 3rd color if you need it, if your sealed pool is bad. This card actually in draft is significantly better, because when you do play it, it will end the game, because in draft you have a legitimate shot of actually drafting the Goku Black deck with all the necessary pieces and the actual ramp and all that other stuff. So like, it actually could end the game there. So I'm going to give it an 8. Yeah, it's a bit better there, just because it should end the game, but there are a lot of hiccups along the way. Like, you might not draw the Goku Black, your opponent might get stuck at 7 and you just don't have a way to get them over there. It's not as consistent as constructed and just closing out the game. So but yeah, Zamasu has a lot of flaws. He's not terrible, but he's not amazing in any as far as super rares go, for the most part. Fuse Zamasu the Cunning. So 4 cost for a negate is a bad rate, but at least you get an immortal body. And with negates being basically at a premium, like, you really only have blockers, and there is removal in the set and ways to tap down the blockers. They're not as surefire as negates. So if I'm in blue yellow even if I'm not Amasa, I'm probably going to try and jam this guy, because when you're ahead on board, it can save your skin. Obviously, the best use for this is to be in the Amasa leader, because then you're only paying 2 for it. Either way, I still would probably jam it. I would give it a 7. It's only a 14k, which really does hurt it when it comes to attacking with this card. I really wish it was a 15k, but then I would think it would just be a bit over the top, because in Constructed, a 2 costs 15k. Negate body is pretty good, especially since it is indestructible and does not leave the field. Aegis is a nice perk, but it's not like game breaking by any stretch. Like, you can tap out 4 for this card, then pitch a 10k that is irrelevant to untap and use extra 10ks that you have to combo over things if necessary. So he is a pretty well-rounded card, but not earth-shattering, and he is one of the weaker defensive options, but defensive options are premium, so that's why he gets such a high grade. Alright, now we move on to the Infinite Saiyan rares. I'm just going to real quickly say this right up front right now. All of these cards except for 3 straight up. These are nice, shiny, rainbow energy. And I'm erring on the side of caution. The only reason these cards are not 1s is because they serve as energy, and they are battle cards, so they are combo power. But realistically, you're never playing any of these cards. Your pool is going to have somewhere between 15 and 18 cards usually of one specific color. The odds that you open like all red and manage to curve out all red energy and still happen to actually be able to play cards on curve is unrealistic. It's just not going to happen. The only reason I'm not just straight up giving the 1, like I said, is not only those reasons I discussed earlier before this, but also like you could still theoretically play them like if both players just have no action going on, don't really have anything besides like leader swings. Maybe the game might go to like turn, like you might just set it up and be able to play it. Like you'll probably hear like some random guy somewhere in the country like, hey, I managed to play my Infinite Saiyan rare because I curved out perfectly, or my pool just happened to be weighted all towards one specific color that I opened 2 Infinite Saiyan rares in. Sure, by all means, like you go for it, but for most people in the average case, even in draft, which is almost always 2 color decks, it's never a 1 color deck, it's just not happening. These are monocolor cards for Constructed. You are not going to get these cards into play except for 1 consistently when trying to play at a competitive level or playing to win. So yeah, Trunks, same thing. Broly, same thing. Kefla, in my opinion, is the only playable one, and that's because you can theoretically have 2 yellow energy on turn 2, which will let you pitch a card from your hand for this activate main to play this card, in which case if you go second and they play like a 20k, paying 2 to get this card on board, KO their 2-drop, and then have a 20k of your own is great value. I'm going to give Kefla a 7. Normally I would say a 2-drop 20k is much higher than that, especially a 2-drop 20k that's an 8, but you incur a ton of risk with this card simply because it is unplayable at every state in the game after turn 2. It is a 0-5, which is nice, but like this card is shiny energy outside of turn 2, and turn 2 going second at that for the most part. Yep, Son Goku, Saiyan Transcendent, same thing, gets a 3. Like, just unplayable. This one more so than any of them. As cool as this one looks, this one is basically unplayable, period. And like this one I can actually safely assume is a 1, just because it doesn't help you at all in terms of energy fixing. So yeah, there's very little reason to play this unless you just want to style on somebody and be like, haha, look what I got in my packs. Alright, so that brings us to our 2 secrets. SS3 Scramble. I don't know really what else to say. You arrival this card for 5, it's basically guaranteed 3 damage. Like, there's 40k single strike is massive. Like, the list goes on with this card. Dual color, 10k. Yeah, it's basically a 5-drop you play during the combo step by pitching either battle cards on board or 5ks from hand or whatever have you. You get 2 damage up front, and because of the second auto, your opponent just isn't comboing for the rest of the game. They're screwed. Like, that's it. Like, it's so nuts. Yeah, if you open this guy, you're winning straight up. If you manage to stick it on board, you're winning. Like, it's basically 3 guaranteed damage. At 5 energy, almost everyone's gonna be at 3 life or less, because everybody's trying to awaken and get to 4 in the first 3 turns. You need to do 1 damage and just jam this on 5. You win. Done. That's it. And then lastly, power of Patara, Vegeta, Kefla, and Zamasu. Oh, like, this is basically the same thing. Like, the secrets in this set are just, like, absolutely nuts. So this is 5 cost. Tap all of your opponent's blockers and energy for the most part. So, like, you're basically getting Alpha Strike for free with everything. You know, there's nothing they can do about it. You get to reload your hand 4 cards, and he's a 40k triple strike. Or I should say, they are 40k triple strike. That's it. It's game over, man. There's nothing. You drop this card, that's it. You either win because your board advantage is too much, they can't block your stuff, or you just have a massive, overwhelming hand advantage. Like, take your pick. They do it all. So yeah, the super rares in this set, or I should say the secret rares in this set, are super pushed. If you have them and you open them in limited and you last until the 5 cost that it takes to play them, that's it. You got it. It's over. You win. That's a wrap. Alright guys, so that's it. That covers all the cards for set 7. Hopefully this has been super helpful to you guys. For those of you guys who are members of the Patreon, be sure to check out the cheat sheet, which will be available today, so you guys can print it and take it with you to your pre-release, so you can remember the best commons and uncommons for each color in the set, so that way you know what you should be trying to play when constructing your decks. If this was helpful to you guys, please leave me a comment, like the video, like let me know, do you guys want me to continue these for either half sets or set 8? I really enjoy doing these. Limited and Highlander are my 2 favorite formats in all of card games. I love playing them because it really tests everything about the player, deck building, play skill, decision making, all that fun stuff. It's a really fun experience. I highly recommend you guys not just only play in your pre-release, but pick up some, packs of 6 each, booster packs, and just draft with your friends one night at a local. It is an absolute blast, and you will discover tons of cards you never thought were good before, and it could possibly lead you to your next big breakthrough when it comes to constructing a new deck. Alright guys, Pat here signing off. Have a good one, Scrub Fam. Bye.